is probably the most important thing we talk about, because what I want to gear this towards is this should help you feel, again, more confident that this is based on outcomes versus you just spending money and hoping that it does something for the business. I think everybody knows when you hire some kind of consultant, marketing, sales, Salesforce, they make it better. They'll do something for the business and they make it better. And you know it works better, it's smoother, it runs better. You know, clients maybe give you some feedback on some stuff they've done. It's always kind of difficult to figure out, did that actually give us money back? Did that make anything better internally for us? And that's sometimes difficult to understand how you even come up with that number. So I'm going to break that down now. So let's pretend in this situation, let's reset everything here, okay? What we have is a calculator to, first, we need to understand what the problem is that we're going to be solving and how much time is being spent on it currently and who is responsible for that task, okay? So I'm going to use a real life example here of a client that we've actually done something for. We worked with a company called Overjet, AI dental company, and there was a lady named Carol that I worked with at this time, okay? We worked with Carol. She was VP of operations, and she was getting paid a nice salary, obviously, being 150K, I think at that time that she was getting paid at a new startup, okay? So we're going to put in $150,000. And what this works out to be down here on this side is you have the weeks worked per year. In the US, pretty standard for a 2-week vacation. So there's 50 out of the 52 weeks per year that you work, and then 40-hour work weeks. She was probably working more being at a startup and being in the C-suite, but to keep it fair, we have this at 40 hours a week, okay? What that does is it spits out what she gets paid hourly. She's obviously salary, but if we have to break this down, we have to understand how much per hour does that work out to be. So that way, when she spends time on certain tasks, we can understand how much money is being put towards that task or how much time she's putting towards that task. So $75 an hour is what Carol is getting paid on the hour, okay? The problem that she was going through is she didn't have web to lead set up. So all the leads they were getting were going into an inbox. She didn't have any automation set up to send that to the proper sales rep. So she'd have to reach out to the sales manager and figure out who it needed to go to. She didn't have any automation set up to figure out alerts to let the sales rep know to call them. And so she was having a lot of trouble where she would create these leads in Salesforce and tell them. They sometimes wouldn't call those people for a couple days, and it would end up losing that deal because they already found another competitor. So they didn't have that set up. And then on top of that, they had a lot of rework happening because from time to time, as she's doing all these leads, they were maybe 50 to 75 people at the business at the time. She has all these leads she's putting in. From time to time, there's going to be a lead that she messes up on. She puts the wrong number in. She puts the wrong email in. She calls them by the wrong name. And so there's some bad data also happening that you have to kind of sleuth around and figure out how to fix it. So there's a lot of time being wasted. What we end up finding working with Carol, we sit down with her for a day. We go through this process that she does, and we find on average, she's spending about 2 hours a day doing this, right? And it's going to keep increasing if she doesn't fix it. And the reason is they're getting more and more leads. They start to spend more and more on their paid advertisement. So it's 2 hours now. It's likely 3 hours by 3 months from now, right? She's going to keep adding time because there's just too many leads that are coming in now that she has to try to figure this stuff out for. 2 hours, though, is where she was at. So we put in 2 hours up here that it takes her. And it's just one person doing this at the moment. It's just Carol. So one employee. What this does for us on the left-hand side is tells us, hey, Overjet was spending $150 a day to make sure that when someone filled out a lead form, it went into Salesforce properly, it notified the sales rep, it assigned it to the right sales rep, and they hopefully called that person right away, right? So that's $150 a day they're spending on that. The other bad side is it's 25% of Carol's time. Carol, remember, she's a VP of operations. So she should be spending her time on strategy and trying to figure out how to make the business smoother and better. The reason this happens with small businesses, as we grow, there's a lot of time where there's a gap. You know there's a problem and something has to be taken care of, but you're not quite ready to hire someone for it, or you think it's going to take too long to hire a new person or train a new person on how to do it. So you just do it. That was Carol. She was always wanting to make sure the business was running good. And so she would just take on all these tasks. So she gets herself kind of backed into this corner. She's doing this task every day. And what she doesn't know is that, a quarter of her time every single day is going towards this task that doesn't move the business forward. Her spending time putting leads in Salesforce, yes, it's important, but for her specific skill set where it should be spent on designing better strategies for the business so that it can operate more efficiently, that's not where it should be spent, right? And we're also paying her 150 grand a year. We could find somebody offshore if we really wanted to for a lot less to do this task because it doesn't take a skill to do it. You just have to get the information from an inbox into Salesforce, right? So if anything, they should have had someone else do this, and that would have immediately dropped the cost. And then number two is automate the whole thing, which we can, and we did. So Salesforce can handle that whole process that we just described. And down here is really the kicker for Carol when we explain this. Hey, you doing this task, it's a huge waste of your time and that stinks. But guess what? Overjet, the money you guys have raised, you're spending $52,000, almost $53,000 a year by you doing this every single day. So in other words, if we do not solve this problem, you will spend $53,000 this year by having Carol continue to solve that problem, by continuing to go in and enter those leads into Salesforce. So we can reverse engineer it, essentially, is what we're doing here. How much time and energy are we spending to do it this way, the current way we're doing it? And how much money would it take for us to just automate it in Salesforce? If we do some quick math here, right? If this takes us, let's pretend we give her a quote, we could do something like this in 10 hours. Okay, 10 hours times $200 an hour, you're looking at $2,000. So in other words, you spend $2,000 and in return, you get $51,000 back in your check or back in your pockets at the end of the year. So it's obviously a no-brainer. And this is the way we want to focus our problems with you guys moving forward. So as we partner and we come up with a list of backlog items with you and some of these playbooks that I just mentioned, it's going to be geared around what is the outcome. We don't really care to focus too much on how much time it's going to take. Yeah, we need to know that. We need to have deadlines and things. But we really want to focus on how big is this problem? Is it worth solving? If it takes us X amount of time to do we have a good return on it? And that's what we're going to be focused on, okay? So at that point, it takes the stress out of the money and what you're paying for our services down to a minimum, because this should always be focused on really how much you're going to make in return. And that's what we want to make sure it happens as we work on these projects with you now as a partner, if we partner up. So that's how we would do this, okay? So hopefully seeing these three things gives you a little more insight on how we want to work with you guys moving forward as a partner, why we feel so confident to sign up for something a little more long-term with you guys,